Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm Kealan Doyle, partner in Symvan Capital. I promised myself that for 30 minutes of this week you won't have to talk about either the English football team or Brexit. But given that I'm speaking about risk and a nuanced understanding of risk, that may be a bit difficult, but bear with me. So, this is the risk warning. We're a technology investment firm, so I think one of the things about Kuber is that you've got, as an IFA wealth manager, you've got a great platform to look at a range of risk-reward scenarios, including asset-backed to technology. So if you look at the growth portfolios, for instance, you'll see us there, as opposed to, say, something that's a bit more asset-backed. We, as was correctly pointed out, we've been involved in EIS and SEIS funds, and you'll find both of them on the Kuber platform. We won Best SEIS Fund Manager this year, and we're a finalist the year before. And we like to think that this is hopefully something to do with our approach and our approach towards risk. Because when you're dealing with technology, I think as everybody knows, you can have the best returns in the market, and we very much style ourselves after a California Ventures style company. But I think due to some of the peculiarities, the positive peculiarities of the taxation system in the UK, it can really shift the risk-reward parameters in a very positive way. So, and I'll get into some more examples in a second so you can really get to grips with how we de-risk this and get some optics on what kind of return scenarios you can expect. Now, if you're looking at something like a FTSE 100 portfolio, having a company go bust is a disaster. It will devastate your returns. If you're a hedge fund manager, you'll routinely have positions go offside and you'll lose money. But hopefully you'll make more on the upside. And that's kind of similar to what we look at. So we've gone through what kind of benefits you get, and they're very generous, but they're generous for a reason, because they are risky. They are the riskier end of the market. Obviously, they're younger companies, they've been trading less than 2 years. But in technology, that's okay. Uber's a little over 4 years. So if you can get to the company at an early enough stage, you can probably find the European Ubers in the future. Now, our experience, we'll get into this in a second, we're a lot of experience on the team. And one of the things, because we used to look at seed level, and you go, from a profitability point of view, do you really make much money off this? You do if you get carry and you do it 50x. But the amount of diligence that we do in these companies, you don't. But effectively, from Symvan's point of view, your costs, you're loading the costs up front in the hope that you can A, de-risk your EIS proposition, and B, get some of those very generous returns. So we have something that we think is rather unique in the market, and it's the life cycle approach. So most people, and it possibly comes back from our corporate finance experience, and we sort of combine the two. So we combine an angel network with an SEIS and EIS fund approach. So effectively, we spot a company. There's another company in Scotland actually, that they have angel source companies for them, and then they follow in with their funds. But what we do is we like to source companies, and we have various avenues that we source these companies through. Then we like to get our angels involved, and our angels are often they add something, they don't just give money, and they often give substantial amounts of money, and then we come in with our EIS funds. And then we have a lot of experience in this stage of trade sales and IPOs. We have a strong ECM background. One of my partners was in charge of the autonomy IPO. I've been in charge of a number of IPOs over the years, and trade sales. So our life cycle approach is kind of, we like to think, unique. But the reason we do this, and we do a lot of due diligence with SEIS, and it will become obvious when I go through some of the slides, and some people take this approach where you just invest in a bunch of companies and you'll probably make money because the tax is so advantageous, particularly if you have a capital gain, and particularly when you take loss relief into account. What we tend to do is, what we have is a deeper, not wider approach, where we spend a lot of time sourcing these companies and looking at them and rejecting most of them, and then we grow with them. But we're still rather relaxed about having some failures at this level, and I'm speaking outright failures, which is why loss relief is important. And I think if you're involved in technology investing and you don't have failures, you're not doing your job correctly. So this is our approach. Deeper, not wider. Diversification within technology. So if I was to say we were involved in anything, it would be probably, if we had a bias, B2B software. But we have a hardware offering. We don't do biotech. We avoid biotech. But we're rather generalist within the system, although we do sort of veer towards software. The life cycle growth approach I've mentioned. Board representation is something that's very important to us, and we get on the board at a very young age of the company. Although most of our SEIS companies, they've had people put their own money in. They're certainly not someone comes to us with an idea. They're usually functioning businesses that maybe have a bit more developmental work to go. But one of the things about the board representation, and it's something that arises out of our IPO experience, is that you'd often get technology companies grow in very funny ways. Because they're so fast growing, they often grow in a lopsided way. And so if you're doing a trade sale, typically to a big corporate has its structure, it has its way of doing things. For that reason, one of the guys who's on our investment committee is someone who's taken fast-growing technology companies and got them into shape for big purchases, notably Skype to Microsoft and Message Labs to Symantec, the California firm. EIS funding. If you look back at the market, one of the things that has characterized it to a certain extent, and I think it's a reason why people have liked some of those investments, the limited life investments, is because we're not investing in a kind of asset play or something that's a 3-year play. You don't know how long the play is really, but you're looking for disruptive companies that it'll be pretty obvious within, say, 2 years, 3 years, whether this is going to work or not. They're usually trying to do something that hasn't done before, hence why you are going to get some failures or some pivoting. But what we try to do is avoid these stranded firms where you give them money, and 10 years later they're still a company that's marginally profitable without really not doing anything. So you've got an illiquid investment that's not earning you any money. So those are our funds. Again, and this isn't probably too dissimilar to most people, except maybe with more of an emphasis on IP. We do tend to look for managers with experience, which in technology is a bit different because we wouldn't have invested in Facebook. A 21-year-old kid who has no money and is taking on Rupert Murdoch, I think we would have probably passed on that, and we would have been wrong. But we're looking for people who have done something before, not necessarily in an entrepreneurial sense, but usually. Realistic valuations is something that you have to, and this is where experience comes in, or our experience. A lot of people in technology will point to a comp in California and go, this is what I think my company is worth. And particularly given that, now it's crashed in California over the last year, but certainly a year or two ago, we were saying A, valuations are a bit different in Europe, B, California's a bubble, and we've seen the bubble 15 years ago. And most of the people who come to us with these valuations weren't there, and so don't know how out of control these get. Our last two, now the reason for realistic valuations, and bear in mind most technology entrepreneurs think they're changing the world. They don't think they're going to double your money, they think they're going to do 100 times your money. And they discount too much success too early. And hence a lot of the investment committee, or when it gets to that point, is about valuations. This is also very important, establishing management controls, and I think we touched on that. And the last we rather jokingly refer to as no egomaniacs. And the reason for that is we're not looking for people who can potentially bring the company down. And that can happen more often than not. So here are some of our advisors. Jeff, as I told you, is very useful at the exit stage. Ian Pearson is our FinTech and Network Security Advisor. Ian is a consulting company called Ballantrae. We've worked on an M&A transaction with him before. We've known him for a number of years. he has a call at C level, like CIO level, to pretty well every bank and stock exchange in the world. That's been his business for many years. Raj is a very experienced media advisor, and Charles is a successful telco entrepreneur who's had some exits. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail because I realize that time is of the essence, and our due diligence is a little bit dull. But suffice it to say that we see a lot of opportunities, and I think probably in common with most managers, the opportunities we go hunting for are usually more interesting than the ones that come flowing in. So references from people we've worked with before are important. We work with various accelerator programs. We've got a good relationship with people like Microsoft. We've done one of our portfolio companies is from Telecom Italia's accelerator. But this is the usual sort of going through them. But I guess the real point here is we do this at SEIS level to the extent you can. And the reason for that is because we know there are going to be some failures at SEIS level, right? We want to minimize them, and so we do spend that considerable amount of time. So here you can have weeks to months. I'd say typically on an SEIS investment we're like 3-4 months. So we don't charge fees to investors. We charge companies, except for a performance fee. So far we've got 9 portfolio companies. We haven't had any failures. We've had 2 pivots. In both cases, moving from a B2C model to a B2B model. 5 out of the 9, now these have all started off at an SEIS level. So some of them had developmental work to be done on them. 5 out of 9 are post-revenue. 1 is EBIT positive. The valuation, and this is established through third parties investing at higher valuations, for the portfolio is up 32% in a little over 2 years. And in keeping with our life cycle approach, we've actually had more angel investing on the back of our diligence and tech assessment than in the actual fund itself. So, here's where we come to the numbers so that you can understand. I don't know if any of you have ever read Peter Bernstein's magnus opus on risk, but it's, I think Martin referred to before about how compliance departments often don't look at risk, assess it in any nuanced sort of fashion. I'd highly recommend that book if you want to get a really comprehensive view of risk. But one of the things is that the FCA doesn't look in any nuanced fashion at risk. So they just put this in the risky drawer. So I've shown you some of the ways that we go about trying to de-risk, looking at the individual companies, because bearing in mind, I'm emphasizing a lot of the de-risking. The upside, and I'm going to touch on some of the companies in a second, is it can be quite considerable. But let's look at, these are both looking at SEIS portfolios, a poor case and an upside case. And what is important here is to realize the contribution of loss relief. So this is a poor case. If we have this kind of portfolio performance, I'd be very disappointed. But in this case, out of 10 companies, we have 9 complete failures. So that's a 90% failure rate. Okay, so far we haven't had any. We're comfortable if we get the odd failure, but with 90% and 1 5x, so in technology a 5x is a modest success. That's not the new Google. That's like, we trade sale it for 5, and this is assuming a 5-year period. And here you can see the importance of loss relief, but you are, actually I've got a little button here, don't I? So if you don't have a capital gains, and this is emphasizing, Sean, your discussion of capital gains and how, because we find a lot of people who are interested in both of our funds are, have a capital gain. It might be a buy-to-let they sold or what have you. So it's 40.5%, which isn't a great return. But given how horrific the performance is, it's not too bad. However, you notice that, if you have a capital gain, that 40% becomes 75, which isn't a bad return. I mean, that's going to surpass anything that any hedge fund delivers over that period of time. Not that hedge funds are setting your standards very high. But this, bear in mind, is with, frankly, a performance that we find very embarrassing. But it also recognizes that if you're looking for the high growth that technology is looking at, you will have some failures. But if you appreciate that even in the context of a pretty disastrous performance, you're getting an okay return, what happens if you get a half-decent return? And that's the next case. So we call this the base case. Now this still assumes that 5 out of 10 companies go bust, completely write off, and you get loss relief. So in SEIS, you're basically what's at risk, if it does go bust, per company is 27.5p on the pound, and 13.5p if you've got capital gains. Now here are the returns. So you've got 1 10x, 2 5x, 2 2x. So 2 double your money, 2 make 5 times your money, 1 does 10 times your money, and 5 fail. Now bear in mind, if you look at the statistical distribution of a FTSE 100 portfolio, it more or less is a traditional bell curve, slightly log normal. This is a much different distribution statistically. But as you can see, the returns are pretty, and bear in mind that you don't pay tax on these returns, they're pretty high by any standards. So if you have a moderately successful technology proposal, you have quite rather achievable goals here, and bearing in mind that you have some failures, you're still getting pretty phenomenal returns. So how long do I have to talk about these companies? Should I do this for 5 or 10 minutes? So let me give you a flavor of what we look for, because really the tax on SEIS is the same for everyone. The tax on EIS is the same for everyone. So really you're talking about your stock picking ability. That's why you choose. So you guys will be choosing on the Kuber platform probably some mix of asset-backed to technology, depending on the risk appetite of the client or the preference of the client. I mean, some people don't like technology. Some people, that's all they want to invest in. I mean, for instance, a lot of our angels are former technology entrepreneurs who've cashed out, and they would never invest in anything but technology. So let me talk a little bit about these so you get a flavor of what kind of companies we look at. So this one, this one here, Baincore. Baincore is based in Cambridge. Baincore is, all of the large enterprises in the world are having to address what they call the code modernization challenge. And the code modernization challenge is basically parallel processing of computing. So where you have 4 cores in this laptop, major enterprises, so banks or automakers or whoever, are now dealing with 61, soon to be 71 co-processors. To deal with this, you need very sophisticated coders. So Baincore has, and we're going next Wednesday, part of a conference with Intel. Baincore is Intel's partner for Europe, and also HP is involved in this, so the triple JV. What Baincore do is go in and help these organizations meet the code modernization challenge. When we invested them with our SEIS, they went to revenue within 3 months. They did 250,000 in their first year from a standing start. They're probably on course just shy of $1 million this year, and it'll ramp up from there. Not a very high risk company. Their risk is that they don't raise more money so that they can hire more of these extremely sophisticated consultants, and therefore disappoint Intel. These guys, Buy and Butler, both these two we've taken out of Microsoft Ventures Accelerator program. So Buy and Butler was actually our first investment. Buy and Butler, it started off as a B2C opportunity, and the idea was that it helps you buy cars more efficiently. So your average person buys a car every 3.5 years, and they spend 50 hours researching it. Your average car dealer has a really horrible conversion rate, like less than 10%. Someone comes in, they're really excited about the car. Typically, it's because they can't finance it. Now, we ended up, but it's not just that, it's also various things. It's not quite the right car. What Buying Butler does is source the exact car or something very similar to the car that you're looking for, or as will become apparent in a second, replacing. What we did with them, first of all, we moved them from a strictly B2C to a B2B, and going after large enterprises, their human resource departments, which is getting a lot of traction. And they've since signed up some big organizations and have, you know, a number of FTSE 100 companies in the pipeline, or FTSE 250 companies. And the reason is because they can offer free benefits. So if, say for instance, they haven't completed this yet, but they're well advanced with HSBC, is that the HR, so you look for a new car, investment bankers get their bonus, they're looking for a new car, they're spending 50 hours, some of that is work time, so it's inefficient from an organization's point of view. They can offer to their staff a free benefit, non-taxable, to boot, allowing them, and allows them to be more efficient. Now we've taken this to a new level with these guys, and they're targeting some of the largest insurance companies, both here and in America. And it's for total loss, what they call total loss in automobiles, so a write-off, which is about 15% of the market. So either someone steals your car, or it gets totaled in an accident. What do? Well, typically what happens is you've got an Audi or something, and it's you know you could sell it for 15 grand. The insurance company gives you 8 grand. It causes a lot of consternation. You're dissatisfied, you probably change your insurer. It's a huge problem for the insurance companies. With some of the largest insurance companies in the UK, and they recently spoke in California, so they're kicking it off with, you know, people like Farmers in America, MetLife. So that's Buying Butler. Cognisys, still cognizant of the time here. Cognisys is disrupting how you hire people. How do you hire people in organizations? Same way you have for 100 years. You get a CV, you look at it, you go, this is a good CV. Perhaps you have a telephone interview or a face-to-face interview. You like the person, you interview with some of the colleagues, and then you hire or don't hire that person. But in that CV, are you hiring the right person for that job? In that CV, there's lots of things, lots of inherent biases you probably don't even know you have. And that could be what university they went to, how old they are, what sex they are. What Cognisys does is through game playing, you assess clients, and it gives a more rounded, a much psychometrics might be the closest to this, but it's much further than that, considerably further than that. So it will tell you from an IQ point of view if this is a smart person, but it'll also tell you, is this a person who can relate to people, who can deal with stress, who can, et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot more sophisticated than that. They've recently, since we invested in them, so when we invested in them, we looked and they had some good clients that they were getting into. They had Stanford University, they had PayPal, they had Ford Motor Company, very small contracts. Since we've invested in them, they've now got IHG, Intercontinental Hotel Group, which involves all the Intercons, the Holiday Inns, the Indigos, biggest hotel chain in the world. And they're going to be rolled out through all of their 12 subsidiaries in Europe this year. They've also got Volkswagen UK, and they've got Uber in Australia. So they're starting to really hit, and the reason why they're disruptive is their competitor is a group called SHL, who they displaced at IHG. SHL charges about up to $100 per test. They charge £6 per test, and they can come down from there. So all of a sudden you're assessing every candidate and not just the shortlisted. I'm going to wrap it up in a second, but I will give you a very, very brief. This is a gaming company developing games. This is a very interesting software which seeks to help the publishing industry monetize their children's book libraries like the music industry did to your old CD collection or your old vinyl collection. This is a group you'll be hearing a lot of. This is in conjunction with, we co-invested, actually we led the investment, again, starting with our SEIS fund, and we've raised just about $1 million in further funding. They're revolutionizing price comparison sites, most of which are rip-offs, so bear that in mind. This is a value comparison site, and it gives you a lot more information, just what's the cheapest price. You don't get the cheapest price, by the way, if you're looking for energy or a new credit card or whatever. You're getting the highest commission that those people get paid. generally speaking, with some, that's a slight exaggeration, but with these,
Followed
they
by
are,
allegedly.
sorry?
Followed by allegedly.
Allegedly. They also have a trip advisory function and a review function within that offering. The people behind it that we co-invested with were from the garage. That's Sir John Hegarty, the advertising guru. Was with Saatchi & Saatchi in the 80s and later his own company. A lot of ads you've seen through him. So he's very important because this is building a brand. That's a B2C and a B2B play. And I'll just end with this one. This is ITAR. This is very interesting. This is our hardware play. It's developed in California. It's by a guy who's designed instruments for people like Prince, Madonna. If you look at the latest Muse, I'm not hip enough to know who Muse are, but I hear they're pretty good. They're using an ITAR, and it's basically a portable guitar that you plug your iPhone into. It can be priced very cheaply, like 100 quid, and we think it's got some really interesting upsides. So with that, I realize that time is at a premium, so I'll wrap that up. I'm going to have to go to a meeting soon, but Maria should be around if you want to ask her any questions, or just check out the Kuber website. So thank you very much.